I'm Cecilia Garcia Akers.
And I'm Jim Akers.
Most of you know my father, Dr. Hector P. Garcia, as a tireless advocate for the civil rights of all Americans, but especially for veterans.
But he was also a skilled physician who was dedicated to making sure all of his patients received the very best care possible, regardless of their ability to pay.
Here are some stories from some people who knew my father very well and experienced firsthand his medical skills.
As you will see, his heart and humanity for his fellow man will be on full display.
He made a big impression on me because he was, Mexican-American and a doctor, very patient. And he used to make home visits. That impressed me a lot because my uncle was very, very sick. And he went there. It was late, about 10 o'clock at night, and my aunt couldn't find a doctor. So someone said, let's call Dr. Garcia. And yes, he got there right away and treated my uncle. And he said he didn't want to, for him to go later and pay the office, but he didn't need any money right now. Dr. Garcia delivered 9 of my 10 children. I wanted him to deliver my 10th, but I think he was out of town or something like that, and it took me real fast to have him, but he delivered my 9 babies. Mm-hmm.
As we were speaking to my mom the other day, when we grew up, Dr. Hector P. Garcia was extremely helpful with our family. I have 6 brothers and a twin sister, and Dr. Hector P. Garcia actually helped my parents and helped us as siblings very much. And my mother said that Dr. Hector P. Garcia was very helpful. He delivered 4 of my 6 brothers.
As a young child going to Ella Barnes Middle School, I remember Dr. Hector P. Garcia being a very tall physician, very well known in the community, and a very nice gentleman, and always provided candies for us when we went to his office. Thought it would be scary to go see the doctor get a physical or a vaccination shot. But Dr. Hector P. Garcia knew how to handle teenagers or young kids.
I'm very grateful to Dr. Garcia. In my teens, I had had an accident, and if it hadn't been for him, I would have lost my foot. There was an object that had fallen on my foot and caused a cut. The dye from the shoes had gotten into that cut, and I wound up with blood poisoning. He immediately put me in the hospital, again put me in isolation. I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. They were talking about amputation, and the doctor immediately, because there were other doctors there, immediately said, no, you're not going to cut this child's foot off. He treated me, and I was perfect.
I do remember 6 of us going into his office with the mumps. We looked like chipmunks, actually. It hurt so much. He told my mom, that's good, you let them, like he said, just let them all get it over with. And he took care of all of us. And she would tell me, and laughing, that when 1 would get sick or 2 or 3 would get sick and they would come in with the flu or with the chicken pox, the mumps, or the measles, he would say, just let them all get it. So you don't have to be going through this because they're all going to get it anyway. And she would, and we would, and he would take care of us. That's some of the funny memories I have, but he was so kind, and I remember him looking at us and just laughing, and we would always have candy that he would give us in his office, and he was very soothing with the children, very, very comforting.
When he would come to the floor to see his patients, he was so wonderful to them, treated everybody so good. He was himself like a politician, a medical doctor, a humanitarian. He just helped in any way that he could, to all those patients. They really loved him, And I hear, but I never went to his office, but I hear that if some people couldn't pay, he wouldn't give them a bill because he knew they couldn't pay.
I really respected this man because I knew for a fact that my dad and my mom always said that he was most gracious in providing physicals for us at no cost or very little money. And that's what I think about Dr. Hector P. Garcia.
And I actually remember going to his office and him helping us so much, giving us penicillin shots when we were so sick and then feeling better, and just letting my mom know, you know, you can pay me when you can. Don't worry about it. Let's worry about getting the children well. So she was so grateful.
Patient that would go to his office, sometimes he didn't have the money to pay him or buy the antibiotics that they need for them or their children. Some of them will bring naranjas, bags of naranjas or potatoes or meals.
I remember entering his office one day in his practice, and I remember the lobby being full of people, full of patients who depended on him and who needed him and who trusted him because he was so sincere and compassionate. And he was probably the only one who could communicate with the Latinos here in Corpus Christi like should have been. He was the only one who was trusted. And so, of course, he knew how to speak Spanish. He wasn't afraid to speak Spanish. He would welcome people who spoke Spanish into his office. That's what's so beautiful about this, is that people who wouldn't normally go to the doctor because they're afraid would go to Dr. Hector because they knew they could trust him and he would take care of them.
Back then, you know, back in the 70s, him and Dr. Bosques and Dr. Profitero Jimenez were the only ones that took care of patients in the west side or in the cot on Chipito Street or Hiawatha. There were not too many doctors that would take care of that population.
And I remember him so well, just walking up and down the hall, and he was always so busy that sometimes, you know, he would make rounds like at 9:30 at night, because he knew he had to see his patients, and he was late because he was involved in everything, politics and all that.
The last one that was just like him was Dr. Bosques.
When I came to be an intern at Memorial in 58, 59, one year, and this is where we began to work with all the Garcias. The main ones that were in active practice at that time was Dr. J.A., Dr. Hector, and Dr. Cleo Garcia. So, and Memorial was their hospital that they practiced the most. Yeah. There's no question that this is one thing that it's hard to learn in medical school. The idea of having people not to be afraid to talk to you or ask you questions. And there's a lot of times that people will say, well, I never talked to my doctor. That is not a good relationship. I said the doctor's always available to you, and Dr. Hector was always available to the patient, and he would respond to the patient. And then if he needed some additional information, he will get it for you. His approach was to be fair, to be complete. The truth came first, and then he dealt with it, whatever was needed. And of course, as a family doctor, he had all the different specialties of doctors that were helping him take care of the patients. And he voiced that to anybody, yeah. And whatever we need for consultation, I'll get it for you. Don't worry about it, I'll get it for you.
He just walked in there and you could tell, you know, that he cared. He cared very much for his patients and the nurses and the other doctors.
He was very, very professional, and in my mother's words, very kind and always helpful to all the children.
If Dr. Hector was still alive, he'd be my doctor. He took care of my whole family.
Fearless man, porque he had a lot of self-respect, and people in the community that he went and they saw the car, they made sure leave him alone, leave the car alone. es el doctor del pueblo, the city doctor.
I have in the hospital right now about 3 people over 100 years old, and I work 7 days a week sometimes, even when I'm not supposed to be working. By that I mean people think I've retired. I may have as many as 70, 80 patients a day, but you are important.
Thanks to you, the Dr. Hector P. Garcia Memorial Foundation will be able to keep my father's legacy alive and promote the civil rights of all Americans.
And by funding scholarships, educational grants, and community building efforts.
Thank you.